Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface with the latest episode of Psychos Crying in Space, aka Star Trek Discovery. This is a week that I've been absolutely dreading. I think it's episode 7, I don't care, they all meld into one. They go in one ear and out the other ear. Because this episode was called Unification III. And if you're a genuine Star Trek fan, I don't class people who like Discovery genuine Star Trek fans. They clearly have no idea what Star Trek actually is. Then you'll know, of course, that in The Next Generation, we had Unification Parts 1 and 2, which was when Picard and Ambassador Spock were on Romulus together. And they were, well, Spock anyway, was trying to build bridges between the Vulcan peoples and the Romulan peoples, trying to, because they were, let's just say, distant cousins, trying to bring them back together, to unify them, hence unification. And it was met by resistance, and it was also met with people willing to listen. It was a wonderful, beautiful episode of tolerance. Something, by the way, which I'll go into very briefly in a moment, that this show knows nothing about. And the people that write this, the virtuous people that write this. And so when Discovery calls an episode Unification 3, then you know from history of this show, from the people that write it, that they're going to do something that's going to tear down, that's going to belittle, that's going to spit over, that's going to disrespect what's come before it. Because these people are animals. Absolutely disgusting animals that don't know anything about Star Trek, don't care about Star Trek, don't care about their audience, and as Kurtzman himself said, it's not about Star Trek anymore, it's about using it as a platform, essentially, to preach their partisan rhetoric. Needless to say, that's exactly what this episode did. And it angers me greatly. And I said very briefly I want to touch upon something, because doing a stream last night with Robert Mayer Burnett, he said something which dawned some realization. He said, if you notice how they've grouped together all the LGBTQ people in Discovery, they've segregated them from the rest, they've created their own little clique. And then I was like, oh, and then I looked, of course, and Mikey Burnham and Spock are doing the same. So you got the Mikey Burnham black segregationists, then you've got the LGBTQ plus YA segregationists, and then you got the people that don't matter, i.e. rest of the crew. Because, as ever, it's an episode of Discovery, so half the people don't appear, and half the people that do appear for a split second might get one line if they're lucky. Oh, because this is the Mikey Burnham show and she's the best at everything. So we start off with Burnham giving some toss-ass, you know, they don't start off with Captain's Logs anymore. They start off with Dear Diary. Dear Diary, I'm depressed. I'm sad. David from accounting won't look at me anymore, and I just feel down. It's high school stuff. Anyway, she whinges and she moans, and then she goes and gets some D from book. Great stuff. Great. Look, hey, look, we just fucked. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, you weren't that good, darling. Oh, maybe you were. So, anywho, so Mikey Burnham has a chat with Tilly. That's the one. Tilly, as.exe, has crashed. And Tilly was just like, you put me in a terrible position by running away last week. And Mikey was just like, well, it was for your best. And she was like, it was my decision to make. And they have, guess what, folks? A cry about it, because this is all about crying psychos in space, as I've already mentioned. They have a good cry about it. Have a cry about it. Cry, have a cry. So even though she got demoted last week, she's assuming the role of first officer in this week's episode. Why? She's been demoted. Why is she Saru's first? Why? Why? Okay, not going to explain it. Okay, yeah. It's because everything revolves around Mikey Spock. So anyway, they explained that Vulcan isn't called Vulcan anymore. Oh my god! It's called something else, which I can't even bother to remember. Because the Vulcans and the Romulans now live on the same planet together, they have unified. But they left the Federation about 100 years ago, and they blame the Federation for the burn, or at least they blame the Federation for trying to blame them for the burn. It was whatever, some bollocks. So Mikey Burnham has a cry! Okay. So they listen to... yeah, Envar. It's called Envar now. That's what they call it. It's not called Vulcan. So he's like, hey, look, they've got some data which we could really need, but they won't share it with us. And Saru's like, well, we've got Mikey Spock. She's the key to everything. And he's like, yes, she's the bestest ever in the universe. Everything revolves around Mikey Spock. And Mikey Spock's like, I am everything and all things at once. Just call me Jesus or God. Hell, I'm all of them together. And they just turn into a fucking musical and they start dancing around, and then they all just start crying, probably. So they say, look, go to Zip Zap with your spore drive to Navarre and see if you can say, hey, look, this is Spock's bitch sister from 1,000 years ago. Can we have some info, please? I'm sure that's going to go down perfectly. And then Saru has to remind the Admiral, or whatever position he has, I don't care, he's got more pips and bits than, I don't know, a thought on Twitch. And he says, look, I kind of did get rid of Mikey as the first, you know, so maybe she's not the best representative for this. And he's like, shut up, it's her show. And then she has a think back to preaching to her pathetic bearded Spock, you know, who they completely retconned, but don't worry about any of that. And then they watch old Spock, Leonard Nimoy, in Unification, which was lovely to see. Spock was horrible to see that they used it on this show. It felt like desecration, especially, oh my God, especially because, you know, Leonard Nimoy is no longer with us. R.I.P. God rest his soul. How do I even talk about this next bit? Oh, as you can probably tell, I'm whizzing through this because this episode was boring and shit. So I'm trying to burn through this like Mikey Burnham burns through fucking egos. Oh God, I don't know if this is the worst scene in Star Trek history. I'm still trying to think of a worse one. I'm sure there has been. But when I say what I'm going to say, then I think there's going to be quite a few jaws which are on the ground, and you're going to be like, what? So much so, there is even a scene later in this episode that does exactly what the audience is going to do when I tell you. Okay, let's just get to it. Saru goes to Ensign in engineering. I'm shit at everything. I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I should be a member of Starfleet. Tilly. People have just realized what I'm going to say. Yes. And he says, Tilly, I would like you, Ensign frickin' Tilly, to be my stand-in number one. What's Discovery's crew? It's like 80 something like that. I don't know. It's not a huge crew. Do you think there are people who are in the command structure that are just like, what the fuck just happened? I have been busting my ass trying to become a member of the command crew and an ensign in engineering who doesn't even think she should be in Starfleet because she shouldn't, who has no discipline over certain elements, bearing in mind Starfleet was a meritocracy, now it's a free-for-all, is going to be given, not earned, given the first role, the second in command of this. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. This show is insane. Freaking sane. So she's just like, I don't know. I'm stupid. I'm retarded. And he's like, yes, but the writers of the show are even worse than you. So they go to there, and they're immediately greeted by an ambassador that's just who this is a hologram. This is not a teleport. Even though it casts a nice shadow, regardless. And she's just like, hey, oh, are you trying to... how did you get here? Our long-range sensors didn't pick you up. And they were just like, we have a spore drive, which allows us to go through the Mynician network in the blink of an eye. And she's just like, oh, whatever, shut up. And so she's like, no, we don't care for Starfleet. We don't care for you. We're not going to share a thing. Piss off. And like, yeah, but we've got a Mikey Burnham. And she's like, don't care. Piss off. And then Mikey Burnham's just like, I invoke the Bok Tok Knock Walk Baka Haka Cocker, which means that they have to have an argument based on facts and logic. Facts and logic written by these fucking monkeys. These monkeys that are hitting typewriters and coming out with scripts for Discovery are going to have a facts and logic discussion. Ha ha! Jesus Christ. So they summon a group of people to shout at her, and then they're like, but you get an advocate too. She's going to zip onto the ship. And it's like, hi, it's Mummy. Let's have a hug and a cry. A hug and a cry. I've joined that sisterhood of lost causes. You know, the one that just likes to stab people with a sword, even though a phaser would just melt your brain. But, you know, whatever, because this is all about whammon power. Whammon, whammon, whammon. No wonder the universe is fucked. It's run by women. Joke. I'm not joking. Right. Okay. So moving on. Saru and the ambassador actually have a pretty Star Trek-y conversation together. And when these two were speaking, I actually felt like I was listening to some Star Trek dialogue. I was listening to an episode of Star Trek. Why? Was it because the dialogue itself was so good? No, not necessarily at all. I mean, if you asked me to recant what they said, I probably wouldn't be able to without listening to it again. Do you know why? It's because they weren't fucking crying! It's because they weren't crying when they were talking to each other. They weren't putting on fake, cracking in voices to try and invoke emotion with what I'm saying. They were just speaking to each other like normal people would speak to each other. Even though this crew don't know how to do that. They don't know how to act like Starfleet officers, not a single one of them, apart from Saru. I mean, unfortunately, he gets written into putting some terrible decisions on the table, but at least he acts like a Starfleet officer and speaks like a Starfleet officer. The only goddamn one. So they talk about something and she's just like, how big's your dick? So mummy and daughter go and do a mummy and daughter thing. Mummy and daughter, mummy and daughter, mummy and daughter, mummy and daughter, Vulcans, mummy and daughter. Don't care. Look, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care. Let's just get to the shouting. So they have their facts and logic discussion, which was just bollocks. Just absolute bollocks, as you expect it to be. Just zoning out of this. And then her mum's just like, you're not telling the truth to them. And she's like, no, I'm doing my Star Trek thing. I'm doing my Starfleet thing. I'm telling them, no, you're a liar to yourself, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to say, look, this bitch is a stupid cow. and you should listen to her because she's my daughter. And then once I've broken her down and made her cry again because she starts crying, then will she tell you the truth? Yes, I'm absolutely whizzing through this episode because my life is worth more than this show. So this is the best scene in Discovery. This is the best scene in Discovery. Tilly takes, I want to say Stamos, but I don't think it is. Stamens. I don't know the names of these shitheads. She takes him into the chamber because doesn't he have an office as chief engineer? I don't fucking whatever. And she's like, hey, Saru offered me the position of first officer. And he says, he basically laughs. He's just putting all these like, what? Why faces like all of us were doing. And then he's just like, taking orders for you would be weird and kind of horrible. And I was like, yes, because it would be, because she's completely underqualified for this role. And then that scene ends, which of course means they're going to come back later and all give her a pat on the back and say, you're the bestest ever. And yes, that scene does happen. So Mummy and Dorothy have a cry, then Mummy and Dorothy have a shout, and then Mikey Burnham's just like, oh my God, please, I take backsies because... Right, actually, let's just stop for a second. I know I'm trying to whiz through this episode because it's dog shit and I hate it. But I just want to bring something here. When Picard did his speeches, his wonderful, beautiful, well thought out, intelligent speeches, which were meant for an audience with an IQ in 3 figures, he would always refer to the larger entity as Starfleet, as Starfleet officers, as representatives of Starfleet, as members of the United Federation of Planets. That would be how he would conduct his speeches. Mikey Burnham always speaks in the first person. I. It's all about me. Because the character is written, I know, it's not Sonic's fault, but is written as a narcissistical, self-centered bitch. And that's all this character will ever be. Oh, and emotionally unstable too. So she says, I withdraw because this is bigger than me. This is because the Vulcans and the Romulans started arguing amongst themselves. Because this is bigger than me, I don't want to jeopardize your unification, so I get the data that we need to work out where the burn initiated from. So I bring an end to these proceedings. You can keep your information. Let's get out of here. Hopefully we haven't done too much damage. You always do damage, you don't cow. And they go away. So of course, because she does that, her mum comes into the room and says, the president was so moved by your selflessness that she said, here, have the data that you need to pinpoint the origin of the burn. That in itself is dumb enough. Whatever. But then they decide to spit all over Leonard Nimoy and Gene Roddenberry's past by saying she also said Spock probably grew up to be the man he is thanks to his sister. Wouldn't be the man he was if it wasn't for her. Go fuck yourself, you disgusting pieces of shite. Absolutely you are a fucking disgrace to Star Trek. This show is a disgrace to Star Trek. You'll try and pull down history, retcon anything to push your own segregationist agenda. You filth. everyone involved in the writing, the production of this filth. You are not fit to even speak or utter Star Trek. You really aren't. Your legacy will always be failure. And you know that. Regardless of how many series you want to renew yourself for, no matter how much retconning you try and do, you will always be embedded in failure. And you know it. And so they have a cry. Oh my God, let's have a cry. It's cry time. And then they all get the group of people who never say anything, didn't say anything this episode, says one line, didn't say anything, no idea who it is. Think they said one line, says one line, says one line, says like 5 lines throughout the whole show maybe. Doesn't say a line. Nobody cares. This crew is bollocks and garbage. Hey, Tilly, take the job. Take it, Tilly, you underqualified cow. And Mikey comes along and says, hey, look, I got the data. I one-upped you, but don't worry. Please, Mikey, please give me your blessing to be #1. You don't need it. I know, but I really want it because I need that validation. And then Saru and the president, they look over and they go, Jesus Christ, wasn't Star Trek good once? And Saru says, yes, but now there's shit all over it. Next week, looks like there's going to be explosions, dead people, explosions, dead people, explosions. That's what Star Trek's about. Hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up. And also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and YouTube for live streaming. Links are in the description box down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now. I hate this show.